Hi, I'm Marina Fogle.
And I'm Dr. Chiara Hunt.
We're the founders of the Bump Class and the authors of the Bump Class, an expert guide to pregnancy. We teach women every day, preparing them for their labours. But when I was pregnant, I actually had very little idea about what was going on inside me and what was happening, the physiology of what was happening in labour. I clearly hadn't listened very well in biology. And yet this is a time I really needed to know what was happening. And Chiara was fantastic at explaining it to me in layman's terms.
So I'm going to talk through the different stages of labour and what's actually going to happen from when labour starts to when your baby's actually born. At the moment, or at the end of your pregnancy, your baby is sitting in your uterus, which is about the size of a watermelon by the time you've got to the end of your pregnancy. Inside the uterus is the bag of amniotic fluid, and I always imagine it a bit like a water balloon with your baby floating around inside the water balloon. And the uterus is held tightly closed together by the neck of the womb called the cervix. Now, during labour, once contractions start, the cervix, which starts off as long and thick and tightly closed, will slowly, very, very slowly with each contraction, shrink till it's paper thin and then start opening up until it's 10 centimetres. And once the cervix is 10 centimetres, the baby's head can descend into the birth canal and be born.
There's the cervix opens, it's actually called dilation, and that's a term you'll hear a lot in labour. People will talk about how dilated you are.
Yeah. And so it will be anything from not dilated at all to 10 centimetres. And only once it's 10 centimetres can your baby be born.
This whole process is split into various stages, and we're just going to quickly go through the different stages and what you're going to feel like and what's happening in each of those stages.
So I'm going to talk you through a little bit about the terminology involved in the stages of labour. The initial stage of labour is called the latent stage, and this is when your cervix is thinning and opening up to 3 to 4 centimetres. The next stage of labour is called the active stage of labour, and this is when your cervix is opening up from 4 to 10 centimetres. Confusingly, this is sometimes in other books called the first stage of labour. The next stage is the pushing stage, when your baby's actually going to be delivered, and the final stage is the delivery of the placenta, which is the organ that has been supporting and nourishing your baby throughout the pregnancy.
A lot of people ask us how long these different stages of labour last, and it's a very difficult question to answer because we're all individuals and we all have slightly different labours. But generally, if you look at the majority of women, the latent stage can last anything from not even noticing it to 72 hours. That is the very extreme end of the latent stage of labour. Typically, the latent stage is longer in first-time mothers and usually less noticeable or slightly quicker for second or third-time mothers. The next stage of labour, the active labour, usually lasts anything between 6 to 18 hours, again slightly longer for first-time mothers. The pushing stage is usually not more than 2 hours because it is very physical for the mother and actually quite exhausting for the baby. The final stage, the delivery of the placenta, varies depending on whether or not you have an injection to help with that, and that's outlined very, very clearly in the book. But it generally lasts anywhere between 10 minutes to an hour or so. A lot of people are quite scared about labour starting, but what we always say to the Bump Class girls is that look at the day you go into labour as the only time in your life you go for a blind date and you're guaranteed to meet the love of your life.